All right. We are excited to welcome to the screen director Lewis Teague. Lewis, are you here? Hey!
Yes, hi,
Lewis, we experienced some changes. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, Lewis.
Cujo is coming back as a werewolf.
Can't kill Cujo.
All right, this is already my favorite Q&A of the year. Thank you so much for this. Well, we've got a packed room of fans that just enjoyed and endured Cujo.
On 35 mil, Lewis.
On 35 millimeter, looked beautiful.
Yeah.
And we all had a really...
How was the color?
The color was fantastic. It was not faded.
How and who managed that?
Our wonderful cinema tech team, Vicky and the team. Thank you so much.
They sourced a great print. It was a good.
Yeah.
It had what Colin Geddes used to refer to as love bite. So it had some scratches, but the color was real good.
Yeah. Those sunsets really they were beautiful.
Fantastic. Yeah, love those scratches. That's like the snap, pop, and crack on a vinyl record.
Exactly. So it was pretty wonderful to experience.
Good. I hope the audience liked it.
Oh yeah.
And hopefully got a jump or two out of it.
Definitely a couple jumps. Definitely some good sardonic laughter at "fuck you, dog." That got a good reaction.
Oh, good. That's the wonderful thing I miss about streaming movies at home is hearing audiences react. When I went to the theater to see Cujo, well, first of all, there are a few spots where I was hoping for a scream and I got them. And also, when Dee Wallace looks over at the baseball bat, somebody in the audience yelled out, "Don't even think about it, bitch."
Everybody's rooting for Cujo.
Well, it is a problem when you have violence on animals in movies because the audiences will suspend their disbelief if they see a person being punished, but not an animal. They just, for some reason, that quality of disbelief is not suspended. So I had to be very careful how I showed them attacking the dog. A lot of it had to be off screen. At least that the lethal stab had to be off screen.
Yeah, you achieve a lot of through point of view, and that tension is something that's very much in Stephen King's original book. The book ends with this reminder that Cujo at heart was a good dog.
He's a good dog.
And was that sort of something that was running through in terms of how you were directing the performance of these? My understanding was 4 Saint Bernards and then a couple puppets as well.
I think it was more than that. How many dogs did it end up being, Lewis?
We had, it's either 10 or 11. I forget the exact count, but we had 10 or 11 animals, 10 or 11 Saint Bernards, because we also had a Labrador retriever that we put into a Saint Bernard suit for a few shots. And we also had a mechanical dog head. And we had a dog suit for a stuntman, too. And I would use, because this film was made before the advent of CGI, everything had to be done practically. And, the montages had to be planned out carefully and would often use a combination of mechanical dog head, live dog, man in a dog suit, all rapidly cut together to get a particular effect.
Absolutely, and that comes from your editing background. I think that this is a film that is so carefully crafted in its tension and pace, and I think I would say it's kind of the strength that you're coming with from your editing background. So can you talk about kind of crafting this film and its tension in the edit?
Yeah, I mean, there my editing background certainly helped a lot. Not just my editing background, but my second unit directing background for Roger Corman, Jean Corman, and others. The deal that I would usually make when I signed a contract to direct second unit was that I edit my own material. At least I hand over a copy of an edited sequence to the editor. Beyond that, they could do whatever they wanted with it. But it was really essential for me, in order to get things to work correctly, to cut them together myself. Yeah, in the editing background, I directed quite a bit of second unit, that's action sequences. And plus, in addition to regular editing of films, documentaries, and features. So certainly that helped a lot in crafting certain sequences. For example, I'll just give you one example. When the dog rams the side of the car, I set up a wide front shot so that I could take the doors off, and the audience couldn't see that the doors had been removed. So one of the St. Bernards could race at the car, and the front seats had also been removed. So it could race at the car, jump up into the car, and come out the other side. And the piece of that snippet that I wanted was the dog racing towards the car and beginning to leap. And that from that point, I cut to a closer shot, different angle of the stuntman in a dog suit flying at the door very rapidly, just a few frames, so it's just barely visible. Then a shot of the mechanical dog head, which was made out of steel, crashing into the door, beginning to dent it. And then from that point, I could cut inside the car to the reactions of Dee Wallace and Danny Patero. And then I could cut back outside to a shot of a real St. Bernard getting back on its feet as if it had collided with the door and collapsed on the ground. And when it's all cut together, it's just a few seconds long, but the montage creates the effect of the real dog colliding with the car door. So that I did a lot of that crafting this show. I was looking forward to this Q&A to your audience, because I've been thinking about this film a little bit recently. It's one of my favorite films. Maybe my most favorite films are my first two. My first film, Lady in Red, and Alligator after that. But this, which came a few later, was actually more sophisticated in terms of how it was made and how effects were created. And also, Cujo is a good example of how a director does not make a film all by himself. Yes, you can be an auteur. Yeah, you can have a great encyclopedic knowledge of film history and know how to craft stuff, but you're working with other people and you're relying on other people to do their best. And that's a director's primary job on a set, is enable everyone working on the film to do the best job, to create a structure, and then have an outline of what you want, but then let the creative people contribute to that. And on this film, I was so lucky to work with a lot of my favorite people. Jan de Bont, the cinematographer.
Yes.
And he had just done Roar with all those lions. Did that help in terms of how working with animals?
I think it made him a little more nervous around a St. Bernard, but because he did get his scalp ripped by a lion on Roar. But Jan and I knew Jan socially for a long time before Cujo. I knew his films that he did in Holland, Kichi Tipple, Turkish Delight, and I had really been looking forward to working with him. And if you're interested, I can tell you a little bit about the history of how I got this job.
No, because it's pretty interesting.
Yes.
I understand that Peter Middick and Nicholas Roeg's cinematographer Andrew Robson were originally tasked with pulling off Cujo.
Well, not originally; they were second. I was the first and third director on there.
Okay, please tell the story.
I'll try to keep it short. Stephen King told Dan Blatt, the producer, by the way, Dan was a saint. He told Dan Blatt that he should, interview me because King had seen my film, Alligator. So Dan Blatt met with me. I was excited. I read the book, loved it, went to meet Dan, explained what I liked about it and what some of the things I'd like to do. Dan and I got along great. Dan hired me, basically told my agent, started making a deal with the agent. But Dan had a negative pickup deal with, I think it was 20th Century Fox at that time. And there was a guy working in acquisitions at 20th that for some reason, I couldn't guess at why it was, didn't think I was the right guy for the job. Now, the reason I'm guessing is
Hadn't seen Alligator.
Well, yeah, I don't think he had seen Alligator. I think he had seen me loaded out of my mind back in 1965 when I was doing a lot of drugs on the Sunset Strip.
Your friend Stephen King.
I had, yes, right. Like Stephen King, beer was my drug of choice at that time. So I had a little business on Sunset Strip in the 60s, and there were a lot of drugs involved and promiscuous behavior and all that wonderful stuff that we used to do back then. And fortunately, I survived it. By the way, when I got the call from Dan to do the film, I was about a year and a half sober. So drugs were out of the picture at that point. But this guy had an image embedded in his head, I think. So anyway, he wouldn't approve me as the director. And so they hired Peter Maydek. And I went off and did a film for Dino De Laurentiis. And, I just intuitively knew I should be doing Cujo. I loved the story. I wanted to do it. I had all these ideas. I'd gotten along great with Dan Blatt. Stephen King had recommended me. How the fuck could I not be doing this? And then I shared this stuff with Dino when I was working with him back in New York. And Dino called me one day and he said, I hear the 20th Century Fox has dropped the film for some reason. And he said, if you want, I producer, you call this guy Dan Blatt and you tell him I will finance the film if you direct it. So I called Dan Blatt and he said, oh, I just signed a deal with Warner Brothers and we're hiring Peter Maydek. So, once again, I thought, Jesus, how is this possible? I totally know I'm supposed to be doing this film. And, a few more weeks, maybe a month went by or two. And Dan called me. He said, hey, we're going to make a change. I wanted to find out if you were still available. And then the rest is history. Now, I want to say, even though Dan decided to replace Peter Maydek for reasons of Dan Blatt's, I am eternally grateful to Peter Maydek because one of the reasons that this film is so good is that Peter Maydek did a really good job prepping it. Peter Maydek is the one that cast Danny Pintero. Peter Maydek is the one that cast Steve Wallace. And those two people it wouldn't be the film that it is if it weren't for Dee and Danny. So I'm so grateful for Peter Maydek. And we've had a chance in recent years to reconnect, and I could tell him how I indebted, even though it didn't work out for him at that time, he's a terrific director, and his groundwork helped me make a good film out of it.
I mean, Danny is gives such an incredible performance in the film. It's so visceral, and actually one of the best reactions I think we got tonight was the gasp of when Dee notices that Danny is sort of hyperventilating and his eyes are rolled back. Could you talk about how you were directing Danny to sort of assume these really intense and scary poses, and it's a really visceral, embodied performance for a young actor.
Okay, I can tell you how I directed him. And I directed him as well as I could with the knowledge, what little experience I'd had working with children, which is that you don't want to think too much about what they're doing. You try to get them actions to perform, and you tell stories. You get them involved in the stories, and kids love to pretend. So, but what made that scene and Danny's performance so special is that he was some sort of savant, I got to tell you. And I didn't witness this, but Dee Wallace said that when she was in the car with Danny, she wanted to talk to him about how we might be able to play the scene. And Danny said, no, that's okay. I know how to do it. I've seen people have epileptic fits. Watch this. Just watch me. I mean, this 5-year-old kid. So, and so he just pulled out of his instincts, out of wherever he got his performances from, which was inspired. That's how that happened. So I can't, I want to take credit for everything, but I can't, unfortunately. And so Jan de Bont, I just want to talk about Jan de Bont for a second.
Of course.
I had, he'd done those films in Kietje Dippel, Turkish Delight, directed by Paul Verhoeven, a great Dutch director. And I wanted to work with him. So when I replaced Peter, I told Dan, I want to bring in some of my people. I wanted to bring my own cinematographer, my own first AD, my own editor, and that kind of stuff. And so I put a call in to Jan. He was available. He wanted to start getting some credits working in the US so he could start his career here in the United States. And we got along great. For example, we'd have to ride every day. We'd ride to the set together in a car, and depending on where we were shooting, the ride might be anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. And I'd like to talk to Jan about upcoming scenes and my ideas for them, and getting his feedback. And for example, there's a 360 shot in the car. We were riding to location one day, and I said, when we get to that scene, it's a scene where this Cujo bites Dee Wallace. She manages to extricate herself, get back in the car door, slam the car door. She's about to pass out, and she tries to warn Danny not to open the car door, and she passes out. So I wanted to go from her coming in the car door, falling against the back of the seat, panning around to Danny screaming, back to her, warning him not to open the door, back to him screaming more loudly, and back to her passed out, and just speed it up until it becomes a blur. And I told this to Jan. We talked about some of the difficulties of shooting the shot that way. One of them is, okay, how do you light it? And I said, well, you can put light fixtures outside the car and let it burn up. And he said, no, a lot of the fun of seeing that shot is being able to see the exterior clearly, the landscape. And I said, well, think about it. A couple of weeks went by, and we were shooting at the farm, and Jan said, hey, watch this. They opened the barn door, and they pulled out a new Pinto that they bought, and Jan had rigged this superstructure on top of the car so a few crew members could get up there with the camera, which was mounted on a swivel and a periscopic lens that came down into the car, and they lit the inside of the car with these tiny lights. And so that's how Jan and I worked together. We would discuss shots, and I would tell him what I was going for. Sometimes I would pose a difficult shot. He loved challenges, so he would figure out a way to do it. A lot of times he would suggest certain shots and certain techniques or certain equipment, And then he would work his ass off to get it, to make it work. Yeah, so Jan and I had a great relationship. So it was a collaboration. There was Dee. I called in my friend Don Dunaway to do a polish of the script. And anyway, I'm talking too much. Ask me more questions.
Well, I'm going to see if the audience has any questions. And if you do have a question, we're going to pass a microphone to you so that Lewis can hear you. Start over there if... I don't know where that microphone is, but it's on its way.
Nikki's coming around here with the microphone.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Hang on one second, Lewis. Right there.
Thank you. Hi, I had a question because you mentioned earlier what makes the movie so great was having such a great team. What qualities do you look for in building that team?
Okay. What qualities do I look for when I'm building a team? Usually I want to work with people I've had a great experience with. And that's how the team gets formed. I try to work, for example, I work with Jan again on Jewel of the Nile, which he photographed. I worked with the same AD time and time again, a Spanish guy named Cujo Lopez out of Madrid. Since I've done a few films abroad in Europe and Spain and France and Morocco, I liked hiring as many Europeans as I could. And so, yeah, I think the question really is I'm looking for talented people, but not just talented people that I had some synchronicity with, somebody that good chemistry that I enjoyed working with, and talent, integrity, ability to work hard, to think, to be creative and suggest things. Another cinematographer I worked with, whose work I really liked when we were on the set, he wasn't offering that much. He was saying, well, tell me exactly what you want and I'll get it. And he was very skilled at lighting and setting up shots, but I wanted somebody that would contribute, to offer stuff, because before I started directing, I worked as a cameraman for years. I shot a lot of documentaries. I did a lot of editing, and I developed a big respect for people in leadership that knew how to work with people to get the best out of them. And if you have somebody who's talented, you want to give them as much free rein as possible, and be open and willing to listen.
So such sage advice. Thank you, Lewis. We have another audience question here from Jamie.
Hi, Lewis. So with the amount of dogs that you cast as Cujo, I want to know how long did it take to make them, put up all the makeup to make them all look so monstrous?
Well,
Or what was the process in just making up some of those dogs? Because poor Cujo looks like he's covered with
Mud.
goo and blood and mud.
yeah, slime, blood, and the problem was the foam was mostly consist of baking soda, I think, and the problem was that as soon as you put it on the dogs, they would try to lick it off. So the trick was not to put it on till seconds before we would shoot the shot.
We have another question over there.
Hi, Lewis. I really enjoyed the film, and I really also enjoyed hearing the process of making those dog effects as well. And I actually worked as a DP on a French-student film where we had to make a cat do something, and it just wouldn't do anything. And I know you also did, Cat's Eye as well, and you got a really nice performance out of that cat. I mean, given the independent nature of cats, how would you say you can make them act, and how are they different compared to dogs?
The main difference is that dogs will work their primary motivation is approval. A cat's primary motivation is food. So that's the main difference. And I was working with a fantastic animal trainer whose name slips my mind right now. He did the animal training for both Cat's Eye and Cujo, and he's the one that explained to me, why you have to motivate cats with food, and so we would need about a dozen similar looking cats, because if you wanted additional takes and you'd already fed the cat as a reward, that it was going to be a while before that cat would be willing to go back to work. So
Glenn Garner, was it Glenn Garner was the animal trainer?
No,
different person. Okay. IMDb fails again. Okay, we have one more. I think another question from the audience. Right over here.
Hello,
there
Mr. Teague. Hi, such an honor. I loved the film. I'm actually a huge Stephen King fan. Love the book as well. Talking about films like Alligator, Roar, Cujo, the review cinema here also screened Shakma, which is about a killer baboon from like that era. I was wondering what about the killer animal craze was going on in like the late 70s, 80s, early 90s. Because, it's Halloween. I'm thinking about, how this film didn't really have a supernatural element. So what is it about animals that kind of is scary? What about, and brought your focus to?
Alligator was a direct offshoot of Jaws. Somebody wanted to do Jaws in the sewers, and I got the script, and having grown up in New York, I was familiar with the New York urban myth that people had thrown baby alligators into the sewers that were now large albino alligators. So but the script was terrible. So I accepted the job on condition I could bring John Sayles in to write the script, because he and I had just worked together on Lady in Red for Roger Corman. When I say work together, I don't mean that we wrote it together. He had written the script, and then I was given the job. But with Alligator, I had some ideas, and he came on board, and I gave him a few ideas, and he ran with it and wrote the script very quickly. But animals are perennial favorite in scary movies, whether it's werewolves or vampire films. I mean, putting bats into the same category. So I don't know if it's a supernatural element. One of the problems I had adapting the book Cujo was compressing it to a reasonable length for a film, which meant getting rid of a lot of subplots, and it wound up also getting rid of some of the supernaturals. All the supernatural stuff pretty much disappeared because we just didn't have time.
You sort of have traces of it, though, insofar that, like, it's almost like, I'm forgetting the character's name, but DeWaltz's husband has almost like a vision that something has gone wrong. And I mean, even the Bat Cave at the beginning, there's something kind of that feels fantastic, even though it's also natural. And maybe it's just a case of, supernatural often deals with things we don't understand, and animals are things that we can study them, and we can understand them to a degree, but at the same time, there's an unknowable factor with animals.
Yeah, I mean, you can read that kind of stuff into it for sure, especially if you've read the book. I don't think there's anything in the film that contradicts anything in the book. In the book, Cujo was a reincarnation of a character, a corrupt cop from a previous book. And that could still be why Cujo went crazy. I mean, I think I would love to do a sequel. No, I don't want to do a sequel. I don't want to do a sequel. I would love to remake Cujo from the point of view of Cujo. Because I think, like, look, he's the title character. He's the one that interests me the most because he was born a good dog.
Yeah.
That's still inherent. He became evil because he had a disease.
Blame the bat. We don't like the bat.
He caught a disease from the bat. Yeah, I mean, but the bats are metaphorical too. You know, they're not. Look, I was a drug addict and alcoholic. I admitted at the beginning of this Q&A, and that was a disease, and I recovered. So I believe in redemption and rehabilitation. I would love to do a film just from Cujo's point of view, and whether his disease kills him or not. I mean, that's something I'd have to work out in the script, whether he gets saved or not.
I hope to see that one day, Lewis. I really do.
You know, I my agent approached Stephen King about it, and Stephen King said, "No way, I'm not going to do it." And hopefully Stephen King rejected my agent's question about remaking it, because Stephen King thinks this movie was so perfect, he doesn't want to see anybody remake it and fuck it up.
I hard agree. Thank you so much, Lewis.
Thank you so much, Lewis. Unfortunately, I think that's all the time we have because we have to move another film into this screen space. But please put your hands together for Lewis Teague. Thank you so much. We'll have to have you here in person for Cat's Eye sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that's a fun film.
Happy Halloween, Lewis.
Happy Halloween, Lewis.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you.